Before you comment, this little thing will not be detracting from my review schedule or anything along those lines. I'm simply making a series about a lot of video game characters I want to overanalyze. My desire is just to look at characters critically and see how they relate to each of our lives and why they're so great. This episode is what I guess you could call a pilot. So if you enjoy this, or you don't, let me know. If you guys don't want to see it, I won't make it. Welp, on to the video. I don't think there has ever been a character in the Sonic series that has been more developed than E-102 Gamma. You know, the robot from Sonic Adventure that has a story that really doesn't apply to the main story. In terms of the overarching plot, if Gamma's story was not there, the plot wouldn't really have changed. But if that were the case, we would have missed out on something truly spectacular. Gamma's story begins with a frame of Eggman's face that immediately establishes that the E-series robots are a bit more unique than the other robots Eggman makes. I mean, why else would Eggman be personally standing in front of Gamma at the beginning? It sort of seems like Eggman cares a fair bit about the E-series. After Eggman explains who and what Gamma is, Gamma is ushered into a training room where he has to destroy dolls of Knuckles, Tails, and Sonic. If we are to assume that each E-series robot goes through this same training, that means that Eggman never really has to tell them to kill the heroes. They're all subliminally taught to destroy them. And I'm just going to speculate here, but since Gamma was told point blank what he is and what his purpose is at the beginning, it most likely means that each E-series robot is made without a set program. In other words, they have a blank mind. So Eggman runs them through this course to manipulate the way they think and the way they go about running his errands. They are taught to kill everything, even other robots. Once Gamma destroys a Sonic doll, Eggman pits him against his superior brother, E-101 Beta, to decide who gets to stay on his ship. Imagine having to fight your brother after just being brought into life. It's a pretty terrible thing to do, since later on we find out that the robots have feelings. The funny thing is here that once Gamma defeats Beta, which is a cakewalk, Eggman accepts Gamma onto his ship. But because of Beta's silent pleas, he also accepts Beta, but not in the way you would think. He gets put on the egg carrier as a spare set of parts, and eventually he gets deconstructed and reprogrammed. However, Gamma doesn't really figure this out until later on after his first official mission, which is obtaining a frog, named Froggy! Of course, Gamma succeeds and brings the frog back to Eggman, only to discover that his robot brothers have failed in finding the right frog. As a result, they are transported away, and the camera pans in such a position that we see E-103 look at Gamma for like 5 seconds until he vaporizes away. It's moments like these that show Gamma struggling to change his mind and personality. He's starting to see things in a more complex way, questioning what is right and wrong, whether he is right or wrong. But how could a robot have these judgmental abilities? After all, they are just robots. Well, Gamma is a very special robot. You see, just before he finds himself in the egg carrier with a frog, he finds himself in a strange place with a bunch of dancing Chow. There, an echidna named Tikal explains that a benevolent god watches over the Chow. I think this is the place where Gamma's personality and abilities begin to change. In the presence of a god and the Chaos Emeralds, it's only natural that Gamma would change a fair bit. In this case, he begins to develop more dynamic feelings, and these feelings only get strengthened after he sees his brother, E-101 Beta, being torn apart and re-engineered, like some sort of plaything of Dr. Eggman. The thing that is most interesting is how all of these things are being processed by Gamma. First, his brothers get separated from him, then he sees another brother being rebuilt from scratch, and then he meets Amy, who offers him friendship, and even saves him from the likes of Sonic, or she stops him from killing Sonic. After that is when Gamma's character drastically changes. He has a mental breakdown after trying to process all these things that are happening around him, and all these images of his life flash before him. He then exclaims that Eggman is now an enemy to him, and that he must save his brothers. And by save, he means completely obliterate their robot bodies. But it's almost like Gamma knows that he's a robot and his life is artificial, so in a way he's freeing their souls from their metallic skin. Additionally, his encounter with Amy's bird is what I think causes this desire to save his brothers, because after all, there are animals trapped inside them, and by destroying their outer shells, he is technically freeing the animals. After this sequence of killing his 4 brothers, he arrives on the egg carrier deck, and processes how far he has come and what E-series are left, which he reasons are Beta and himself. He looks at his arm, almost knowing that if he truly wants to save the E-series, he has to kill himself. He then goes up to Beta and confronts him. There's something amazing about seeing Gamma, a scrawny fellow, stand up to this powerful, sleek robot. And in the end, he defeats Beta, but unfortunately for Gamma, Beta takes a potshot at him that ultimately leads him to his death. At first glance, this potshot just seems like a final act of maliciousness for the villain Beta, but I think that Beta used his last strength to put an end to the E-series, just like Gamma had been doing throughout his entire life. Perhaps Beta knew that by killing Gamma, he would reunite the family of Flickies inside both of them. After all, Gamma knew deep down that that was the only way to truly save all of his brothers. The music with Gamma's death creates a scene of tragedy that really makes you think about all this little robot has done, all the challenges he overcame, and the friendship he made with Amy that caused his life to change. I remember as a kid I couldn't stop crying after I saw Gamma explode and his Flicky fly off. The story had a way of making you genuinely care about a little robot, and after all, he became the most powerful robot in Eggman's arsenal. He defeated every E-series robot with little to no effort. A lot of people tend to complain that Gamma's gameplay is too easy, but I think that's the point. The game is supposed to make you feel like Gamma is overpowered, and despite being simple, he's still strong. It's supposed to be a cakewalk through the levels to show how powerful he is. Sure, it doesn't make the best level design, and there are flaws within his gameplay that I don't really want to discuss right now, but in terms of the plot, Gamma's gameplay shows you the capabilities of an inferior person, according to Eggman. His story represents much more than someone becoming stronger and overcoming obstacles. At the beginning, he was just some innocent robot, and then some other conflicts began to overcomplicate things, causing his views of life, reality, and good and evil to shift. His whole journey is him finding himself and what it means to truly be yourself. He is, in many ways, breaking the mold of society by turning against Eggman and helping others. For someone who didn't really understand emotion, although he felt it, he sure was loved. It remains today to be the most compelling Sonic story ever, in my opinion. It invokes emotion, and you can really connect with Gamma's struggles with understanding the world more and trying not to conform. And when Amy offers Gamma friendship, which is something he was never given, it never fails to make me smile inside. And that's why I love Gamma. Thank you so much for watching, and once again, let me know what you thought of this little series. Do you want to see more character discussions and analyses? Let me know in the comment section below. Alright, take care and goodbye.